all efforts to arrange this webinar. I welcome you, sir. Next, my welcome goes to the organizing secretaries, Dr. Sheba and Professor Bose, and the and Mr. Timothy Kingsley to organize this significant event. I welcome you all. I'm also delighted to welcome my dear colleagues and student friends for showing a wonderful interest to participate in this noteworthy event. I once again welcome you all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. As the next part of the webinar, I would like to invite my friend Meera Bhanumadi, 3rd BCom Aider, to introduce our guest of honor, Mr. T.P. Srinivasan, sir.
Good morning, friends and dignitaries on the dais. I am delighted to introduce our star of the event, T.P. Srinivasan, sir, a fountainhead of knowledge, who is going to furnish us with his insight on the topic New Education Policy 2020 in Higher Education. He has a creditable academic record, having stood first in the University of Kerala in BA English and MA English. After his studies, he joined the Indian Foreign Service. He is a former ambassador and permanent representative of India to the United Nations, Vienna, and is presently the chairman of the Academic Council and director of NSS Civil Service Academy and the Director General, Kerala International Center. He served in the Indian Foreign Service for 37 years and has nearly 20 years of rich experience in multilateral diplomacy and has represented India at a number of international conferences organized by the United Nations, the Commonwealth, and the Non-Aligned Movement. He speaks Japanese and Russian and has authored several books which includes Words, Adventures in Diplomacy, Encounters Mattering to India, Applied Diplomacy Through the Prism of Mythology, Education of an Ambassador, Venkat Forever, and More Diplomacy. He also contributes regularly to Indian and foreign publications such as the Asia Wall Street Journal, New York Times, The Hindu, and the Times of India. He is a keen golfer. His prizes and awards include the Professor M.P. Paul Prize, the Harvey Memorial Prize, Reverend Father Panikkar Memorial Award, and the KPS Menon Award. He is a person with deep intellect, knowledge, and simplicity. I would like to conclude by attributing profound gratitude to T.P. Srinivasan, sir, for responding to my every mail and showing his keen interest in participating in this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Meera. Now I request our chief guest, Mr. T.P. Srinivasan, sir, to take over the session.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the very generous introduction and warmth of welcome. I'm very pleased to speak to you today about the new education policy of the Government of India, which was announced in 2020. So it's known as the NEP 2020. I have a great interest in this subject, not because I'm an educationist, but because I have tried for 5 years in the Higher Education Council of Kerala to reform higher education in the state. We made a number of proposals, not just me, but several other academics and others who formed the council, gave a roadmap of what the higher education should be in the context of Kerala. We identified several areas on which we prepared recommendations to the state. The first area which we concentrated was on how to make education a liberal education, which the student-centered and choice-based education can be introduced. And many of you know that we have not reached this stage as yet. The second thing that we studied was teachers training, because we felt that the teachers were not getting adequately trained with modern pedagogy and modern teaching methods. The third issue that we addressed was the use of technology, how we can introduce technology by way of distance learning, the massive open online courses, flip schools. There are many, many ideas that are being practiced in different parts of the world. The fourth idea that we proposed was greater autonomy for institutions. The idea of a university hosting several colleges does not make any sense to us. And so greater autonomy to the colleges. And then research, very important, because in India, research is still in its infant stage. And then we also did a study on internationalization of education, which is absolutely essential in this century. We made very major recommendations in these fields, but unfortunately, there was no consensus among the political parties in Kerala because we have very different perspectives on education. So as a result, most of our recommendations remained on paper, except that we were able to establish for the first time 20 autonomous colleges in Kerala. You in Tamil Nadu are familiar with autonomous colleges, but we had not had any autonomous colleges, so we are now catching up with you. And that was the only reform that we were able to actually carry out. But our recommendations remain, and we hope that the subsequent governments will pick them up. But so, though I said I'm not an educationist, I'm a diplomat. I've been a diplomat for 37 years, as you were told. And education was just an interest because I was teaching in the university for a year before I joined the Indian Foreign Service. And when I was asked to take up this position as the vice chairman of the Kerala State Higher Education Council, I was surprised because my experience was very limited. So I could be called an accidental educationist. But I took it up as a challenge, and since I had so many valuable colleagues with vast experience, we'll be able to make a contribution to this. So when I was somewhat distressed over the lack of attention that our recommendations got, we saw the new education plan. There have been several drafts before in which we had played a part. Our suggestions are also put in. And finally, when the draft came out, or the policy came out, we were quite delighted that many of our ideas found place in the policy. It's not because they copied us, but because there are certain things which are inevitable and indispensable in the 21st century. And so I was delighted that some of these ideas found its place into the education policy, but it is much more than that. It is a comprehensive study of the education system and very major recommendations, which might take some years to fulfill. Let us see what the Prime Minister himself felt about the education policy and what his vision was, because he is the motivator of the whole idea of bringing about this new education policy. So the first words he used were quality of education. Most advanced and modern 21st century is the use of knowledge, learning, research, innovation. And in other words, what students want to learn. So without going into details, if I am to ask to summarize the thrust of the new education policy, whether it is at the school level or the college level, is to liberate education. Because the last education policy was 1962. It's not that it remained static. In between, so many reforms were brought in specific universities, and also as a whole in the government of India. Since it is a concurrent subject, states were also involved. So things moved on. Very many things changed in the system. But this was finally to give a final shape and to make it a policy which everybody can accept. Of course, there are still differences of opinion between the states and the center on this policy. Particularly, the Kerala government has been rather hostile to the education policy because their philosophy is somewhat different from the philosophy of a liberal education that the education policy proposes. But I hope that over a period of time, all these recommendations will be brought into effect with the kind of needs or changes in accordance with the opinions of different governments and different political parties and different intellectuals. So we have set on this process, and as I said earlier, the most important feature of the new education policy is that it should be liberal, and we should break the controls and very, very specific prescriptions and regulations, etc., so that people can follow education in a manner in which it suits their taste and suits their interests. And for this, we have to really look at the most modern universities in the world. As you know, there is a classification of universities all around the world. And there are some universities which have been designated as the world-class universities. And it goes by the quality as they think it is the value of each of these colleges. And unfortunately, India was not on this list up to at least 200. Up to the 200 level were considered to be the top universities in the world. And till a few years ago, we were not even within the first 200. But now some universities, particularly research universities, have been included. Even though our IITs are considered excellent educational institutions, even they were not there. Now there are one or two IITs, then the Institute of Science in Bangalore, and there are some other research institutions which have also been brought in. And if you examine these universities, we will find that we fall behind them in many ways, because the kind of criteria they have established to find the world-class universities, most Indian universities do not qualify. The reason is, as I said earlier, the essence of university education is considered to be research-oriented. And there are certain benchmarks on research. The first benchmark, of course, is how many Nobel Prizes you have received. So we, as you know, have not received a Nobel Prize in the last 100 years. So you can imagine we get a 0 mark on that. The second thing that they look at is the patent system. How many patents these universities have? Yes, we have many. And then the question is, how many of them have been commercialized? How many of these patents have been actually introduced for the betterment of men? Because economic prosperity through the development of a knowledge economy is really the objective of our education system. So if our knowledge has to be part of the economic prosperity of the country, then it has to be, these patents have to be commercialized and made available to the common man. This has happened, but very limited. If you compare it with a university like Harvard or or Stratford or Stanford, you will find every research student brings his ideas, new knowledge into the patent system, and they have startup companies in which the professors collaborate. And the professors and the inventors work together and set up companies which make profit, not only for the students, but also for the professors. So that system, we unfortunately do not have. Our patents are given to commercial institutions, and sometimes it works, sometimes it does not work. So there again, we do not get much of a point. Then how many foreign faculty do you have in your institution? Again, very small numbers. How many foreign students do you have in your university? Again, very small number. Because the number of students coming into India for education are very few. They come for Indian culture or yoga or cooking or Bharatanatyam or Mohiniyattam. But nobody comes from abroad for modern scientific education in India. Not because it is not there, but because of our system does not permit easy amalgamation of these courses with foreign universities. And and this is the reason why we have not been on the world-class universities, but now 3 or 4 have come up to 200, but then hopefully we will improve. And there is a social role also for education. You must have compassion, you must have sympathy, you must have courage, you must have resilience, you must have a scientific temper, and you must have creative imagination. So these are the qualities we need to instill in our students. And that is the reason why the education policy has been evolved. So the first is to get into world-class education. Then the second is to make it possible for our own society. So there is a knowledge economy out of which the nation profits. There is a theory that these are too practical, too mundane wishes. The idea is to transform young people into good citizens of the country. But this is not in contradiction to that. But unfortunately, there is a debate as to whether the objective is to find a job, to find a better life, to create an economy, or merely to expand your horizons and think in terms of philosophical changes. So we can have both. We don't have to really compete between the two, because we all go to universities and colleges to get a suitable profession. That's very important. I don't think you students are sent to the university to become better citizens. That, of course, is automatic. It's expected. A university is expected to do that. But to put it in contrast between the two is not fair. And what are the problems in our education system? There's a whole list given in the new education policy. First is employability, as I mentioned. But some people don't give employability a priority objective of education. Stressful examination. This is something which has constrained our education system because students are focused on examination. In fact, the Prime Minister said that we have become slaves to the progress report. For every year, the children dread the arrival of the progress report, however well they may have done. Because when you take it to your parents, the first question is, why are you not better than this? So there's a constant pressure. Even if you have 98% marks and you take your progress report to your father or mother, the first question is, what happened to the 2%? So that kind of a pressure we have put on our children, and therefore there is stressful examination. Then insularity. Most of our institutions operate on their own, and they really don't understand or follow other institutions. Then lack of practical knowledge of teachers, students, and others. Then excessive regulation. There is a UGC, University Grants Commission, which regulates everything. There are also other regulatory bodies. So if you are a principal of a college affiliated to a university, your regulations start from there. All the university regulations come to you. The university decides what kind of examination to set up, what kind of results to publish, when to publish, what to do. So what are you doing as an individual college? So excessive regulation. Autonomous colleges are slightly better, but not much better. Then language policy. We have not had a coherent language policy so far. Different states and different universities follow different language policies. Whatever we may say, even today, success depends on your ability to speak and read good English. This is no contradiction with our vernacular language, our mother tongue, or the national language, or anything like that. It's a practical thing, because we ourselves do not have a clear linked language in which all of us can participate. So English acts as a linked language inside the country and outside the country, definitely. So whatever you may say about your love for your mother tongue and the need to communicate in your mother tongue, since we do not have the opportunity to all of us to remain within our own states, we need to develop a good language policy. So the new education policy, as expected, provides for 3 language formulas. And the major change that they have brought in is that in the first few years, now the first few years our children go to English medium schools because it is not regulated. You can go to any school and it depends on that school to give you the kind of education they think that you need. So now the government has stepped in and said the first 5 years should be also part of the system, and it should be in the vernacular, in the mother tongue. And this is fundamental because for the child's development, child's growth as an individual, and to imbibe the culture of that part of the world, they need to have a kind of the language ability. And then after that, by the age of 10 or 12, you switch to English and also switch to the Hindi language. So though no imposition, if you don't want Hindi, you don't need to take it. I know particularly Tamil Nadu has sensitivities on this. And so a formula has now been found for language. And the other problem that Indian education faced was there was no opportunity for dropouts. Because what happens is you join a course thinking that you are going to be a mathematician or a physicist. Till you come to grips with it, you don't know whether you're going to get it. So you may realize, contrary to your expectation, that you are not a mathematician. You are not able to cope. Then what do? You simply have to suffer it and go through the 3 years and private tuition, or tutorial, or this, that, and the other, and produced a poor result at the end of it. There is no rescue plan. And that is one of the major components of the new education policy. I'm sure you must be knowing that after the first year, you can quit if you want, but your credits will be saved in a bank. Second year, you can quit if you like with a diploma. First, you will get a certificate. Second, you will get a diploma. Third year, you will get a degree. So you can drop out at any time, but you complete your undergraduate studies only in the 4th year, and which enables you to secure admission elsewhere. So here is this opportunity for you that if you don't like what you have chosen, at any time, you just don't have to drop out and go to something else. You can store your credit in a credit bank and come back to it. Go and work in the Gulf for 2 years and come back, make a lot of money, and come back and resume your studies. So what a beautiful arrangement. I'm not suggesting that all of us should do that, but that option of an escape route is provided in the new education policy. Then internal assessments. We did not have too much of internal assessments because of the affiliation of the university, and university determines what. But internal assessment is a very important aspect of education, because who better than your teacher knows how good you are and how much you are capable of and what kind of studies you should undertake. Then, role of the private sector. This is nothing new in India, but at the moment, there are quite a few reservations, particularly in Kerala. There is a resistance to private universities. We do not allow private universities in the state. So we made an elaborate proposal for allowing private universities to operate in Kerala, and we prepared a bill and various other things, but nothing moved forward. Now there is still some talk of some, colleges, deemed colleges are operating campuses in Kerala. But other than that, we do not have a private university. Of course, we have no foreign university because there is no foreign university anywhere in India, and that is still being considered by the government of India. But the education policy prescribes that as many foreign universities as possible should be permitted to come into the system. So, and another important, again, speaking in terms of the problems that we face, as I said, one of the major problems was affiliated colleges, because the affiliated college system does not exist anywhere else in the world, because every educational institution is a degree giving institution. They don't go to another outside agency to determine what kind of degrees your students should get. Of course, in the case of autonomous colleges, the examinations are held by the colleges themselves, and then the results are endorsed by the university, and the certificates, degrees are given by the university in the name of the college. So these were all the problems that we faced, and the framers of this. A lot of debate took place on this, and very many intellectuals worked on it, and they also emphasized the spirit of India, as it were. The proper Indian soul must be put into it, and we have to go back into history, introduce Sanskrit, introduce major classics in education, and that is a directive also in this. So while modernizing and advancing, also we must have our spirit rooted in the culture of India. Now, just to go very quickly on to some of the recommendations. I know you are not particularly interested in the school education. I myself have no great experience in that, except that I went through schools 60 years ago. Now it is in place of 10 plus 2, you have 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. So different grades, and the medium of instructions, regional language up to grade 5. Children studying in English has also learned some local language. Then flexibility of multi-level training. Then vocational training to start at the age of 6 to 8. And autonomy in school education. So these are the fundamental changes in the school thing. I'm not going to details. So in the higher education sector, the major recommendation is that all universities should be multidisciplinary. The universities, present colleges will turn them into universities. This affiliation system is supposed to end, not immediately, 20 or 30 years. So by the time affiliation ends, every university, every college will be a university and not a specialized university. Now we have veterinary, agriculture, blah, blah. But university does not mean that you keep your knowledge in silos. You have to have an integrated education system. So in the future, we will have only multidisciplinary universities, like the IITs and IIMs, which used to focus either on technology or on management, which were specialized, but now IITs and IIMs are also expanding their horizon. So then the government has a proposal to set up free universities, entirely free universities without any restraint or regulatory system. But they have to be non-profit, but they can experiment with whatever system which is acceptable to the teachers and students. 40 of them are also to be set up. So in other words, education to be opened up. Then I already mentioned to you the dropout solution for the dropout system. Then research has to be patent-oriented, knowledge creation-oriented, and not knowledge gathering exercise. Because many PhD theses are written by taking out the information available already and compiling them. And that does not mean research. So everything will be multidisciplinary. Research will be absolutely part of the system. So there are so many details, but these are the essential elements. And they have a large number of recommendations as part of the new education system. Now, what are the problems? What are the criticism? First of all, there is a fundamental position taken by several people that education should never be privatized or commoditized. Education should not be commercialized. But this problem has been resolved already in the context of WTO. The world's countries have got together and said that knowledge is tradable. Unless you make it tradable, there will be no incentive. So we have come much forward. That is part of the World Trade Organization has accepted education as a tradable commodity. So for us to now sit back and say, no, this should be like the old Gurukul education and everything should be, left to them, and no government control should be done, etc., which has not worked. So this concept of knowledge being the privilege and the right of individuals, and this is one. Then there is some criticism of saffronization, because there is a BJP government. They see all the new elements like teaching of Sanskrit or education in a comprehensive manner. All these are part of their own philosophy. But that is a wrong reading of the education policy, because this is being left to the institutions, and teaching of Sanskrit is not going to bring in Hindutva as they seem to worry about. So these are some of the concerns expressed, but these are not, because one is fundamental. If you say nothing should be commercialized, privatization should not be done, etc., then we cannot move forward, because the government simply cannot afford to fund all the education projects in the country. There's a lot of private enterprise already. The missionary institutions, the community institutions, private enterprises, as commercial institutions, all functioning in the country. And many of them are more successful than government institutions. I'm not saying that the government institutions are bad, because I myself have studied in all government institutions, right from class 1 to master's degree in English. I never went to a private university. But when you look at the private colleges and private universities, we feel that they have better education. And therefore, to argue that the government should have nothing to do with education is not acceptable. So the main elements are these in the new education policy. Of course, it's a huge document and we can go on speaking about forever. But after I complete my presentation, and in the few minutes that we have, if you have any specific question to ask on any of the aspects of higher education policy. But finally, I'd like to say that this is the beginning of a transformation. Revolutions cannot be created overnight. And so we'll have difficulties, we'll have problems, we'll have strikes, we'll have teachers resigning, so many things will happen. And that is why the Prime Minister has said that when we celebrate the 75th anniversary of Indian independence next year, at least the school level reforms should be brought into effect. And for the rest, there's a new curriculum committee which has been established with Mr. Kasturi Rangan, who was the chairman of the drafting group. He himself is going to do a curriculum examination. And another thing which has been established is a credit bank, which has already been established so that credits can be transferred from one institution to the other without the present hassles. And also they can be kept there whenever you want to resume your education. And so some of these things have already started happening, but the more difficult ones are private universities, foreign universities, and totally liberal colleges. These may face some problems, but there should be no problem about the other recommendations. But what we need to do is to accept that changes are required. Because in the last 10 years, education has changed more than in the last 100 years. All these massive open online courses, which if we had adopted in 2011, I had recommended to Kerala government that we must accept and adopt online education. But they all laughed at it, saying that, oh, it's not necessary, online education is not good enough. But look at us now. In the current situation, we have no choice. If we started it in 2011, we would have all been expert at it. Because online education is not a substitute for offline education, but it adds to the value of education when you have online. Because the knowledge available in the internet is so vast that no individual or no university or no college can claim. So the accessibility to the best institutions in the world through these platforms were available for the last 10, 15 years, started by the Khan Academy and Coursera, edX. There are so many platforms through which you can access any university. So I have been saying that our students should be encouraged to take these courses. It is free and thus add to their knowledge, and you give them more credit for that. And even teachers, you encourage them to go and take these courses, 2 months, 3 months courses, and come back and give them an incentive, give them a bigger salary, or give them a promotion or whatever. But we ignored it. There were people who were talking about universities without buildings, because through the computer, you can acquire as much knowledge as you can from a classroom. Now we are learning it, but learning the hard way, because we are not equipped for it. We do not have electricity, we do not have connectivity, and therefore there's a lot of disruption. And people are waiting to jump into classrooms. Yes, classrooms are good, but in the present system, as I am now speaking to your college, sitting in Trivandrum in my own home, is a facility that we should not give up, because that gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility. And that's what we are using. So even in the happy days after the COVID-19, I hope we will continue the system. And the UGC has already said that should be 60% classroom and 40% online. But we have lost precious time, and that has affected a whole generation of students. Well, I'll stop with this, and if there are questions, I can try to answer them in the few minutes that we have together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for giving us an ample information on new education policy. Thanks a lot, sir. Students, if you have any queries, you can please interact. Students, if you have any questions, you can unmute your mic and please ask your questions.
Good morning, sir. It was a very nice information, sir, we gathered about new education policy. I have a question to you, sir. The present education system, we focus more on 10th standard and 12th standard board examinations. Will this continue in the new education policy, sir?
Well, at the moment, yes, but they will move on to more internal assessments in the future. Because as long as your affiliation system continues, because they are giving about 30 years time to abolish the affiliation system. So gradually these will be introduced. In fact, I don't know whether you are familiar with this, that there are countries where there is no examination at all, the way we understand it. Because we still write about Newton's principles, essays we write and get a degree. But you never apply that to our ordinary life. And so most examinations in advanced countries, major universities, are done on the basis of problem solution by students, not by writing essays. So that will be a major change that will be brought about. But that will take time. In some schools, you may have heard in Finland, that completely eliminated examinations from the high school up to the high school level. So our children will be very happy to hear that. They have no examination to take. But they'll be constantly assessed by their teachers. And by the end of the year, the teachers know much more about them than any education or any examination can prove. And that is the system. And the other developing system together with it, what is called the flipped schools. I don't know whether you have heard of them. Flipped schools envisage teachers as mentors, not teachers or lecturers. I remember when I joined the university to teach, I was called a lecturer, which meant that your job was to just go into the class and give a lecture and walk off. There was not even any discussion. Nobody asked any question anyway. So that has been, now nobody is called a lecturer anymore. Everybody is at least an assistant professor. So professor is better than lecturer. But they do virtually the same thing. You give the same lecture again and again and again. Why do you need that? If you have a mobile in which you can discuss, you can record your lectures and give it to the students. Why should you waste your time, morning till evening, speaking to them? Just give them those lectures. So what they can do is, they can listen to those lectures at night. Instead of doing homework that we ask them to do, what do? We ask them to, I'm not talking about colleges, but in schools, we ask them to do homework. And the students go home and they have no idea how to do it. So what happens is the brother, the sister, the mother, the father, and even neighbors join in to help them to do homework, right? And they all do it in different ways. So eliminate it. And the homework should be merely listening to the talks by the teachers, while the teachers are sleeping at their own homes. And then you come to the class. and the teacher helps you to do your homework. And this has been introduced in many countries. I tried to do it in our universities, but there was no taker. They said, oh, we don't have a mobile phone, we don't have a recording facility. I mean, kind of excuses. But now we see nobody's giving any excuse about online education. So it's a matter of mentality, what I call the mindset. Because going further than the education policy, I would say that the methodology used all around the world, you need to give this a try. Anyway, is there another question?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Excuse me, sir. Good morning, sir. I'm Madhishwari, sir.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
have a question, sir. How to make the states who are opposed to new educational policy to accept this, sir? And what is the foremost reason for their opposition, sir?
Their position on the policy? No, what do you mean by that? Some people are opposed. So what do you do with them? What is the question?
Some states are against this policy. Why should we impose this like that? So why are they opposing this new education policy in some ideas?
Yes, I explained that because they have a different approach. They say that the new education policy is talking about a knowledge economy. They don't accept that. Knowledge should be free. There should be no economy. I mean, this is for 21st century, it's a strange idea. So what I expect is they may say all these things, but gradually and slowly when they introduce new things, they will accept. Nobody is going to impose anything on it. See, nobody has objected to the credit banks. Nobody has objected to the new system that has been introduced. So you cannot uniformly probably introduce all of them at the same time. But gradually and slowly it will happen because people catch up very slowly. Online education is a good example. 2011, I have been talking about online education. But how many people accepted it? They said, what is education without contact, without socializing? Yes, I agree. But there are merits in the online education system, which has now come as a blessing in disguise. We are forced to do it. So all these things will slowly come up. That's what I expect, because I think there is logic in the new education policy and it should be implemented.
Thank you, sir, for your kind response.
Thank you. Mohana Priya, did you ask for a floor?
So good morning, sir. I have a question. I'm Aishwarya.
Yes, Aishwarya. Okay.
It has been said that until the age 10, students would be taught in regional language. After that, won't it be difficult for them to suddenly speak in English after the age of 10?
It will be difficult, but it has to be done. What choice do you have if you have to know both languages? I studied everything up to class 10 in Malayalam. Everything. Even English, they used to teach us in Malayalam because teachers did not know much English. So I went to the college. I was considered a great student, a brilliant student, but when I went into the college the first few days, I did not know what the teachers were talking about. Nothing, because they won't say a single word in Malayalam. Now I know in colleges they use a lot of local language, which is not good, because that doesn't give you education in English. So for a child of 7 or 8, to change to another language is not going to be difficult. And that is the experience. Because within 1 year in the college, I was able to read, write, and speak in English without having had any English medium education at all in my life. So it is possible. It may be difficult to switch, but if you don't do that, they will never learn their mother tongue. Anybody else?
Good morning, sir.
Morning, Yatika.
I'm Yashika. So, will the state be free to make changes to the new education policies? It depends upon the circumstance they face.
States are doing what? Sorry?
Sorry, will the states will be free to make changes in the new education policy?
Yes, definitely. If that makes sense. If a state wants to do something stupid, they will not allow that, definitely. But depending on the conditions of the state and the facilities and funding available to them, they can make changes. But you cannot make fundamental changes. They cannot say, no, we will still have only agricultural university or engineering university. That will not be allowed. But there are practical problems or practical needs required for the states. That will be accepted. Anyone else? Well, the teachers, if you have questions, you can also ask. I know you know it better than me, but.
Sir, there is a question in the chat box. Can you read it, sir?
Sorry? Please read out loudly.
How will the role of universities change when college became autonomous?
Yes, university will have to focus on academic matters and not running around appointing peons in colleges. So now they have a complete control of the entire system. What examination you should do, this, that, and the other. No, the university will not be a regulatory body, but a facilitator, in the sense that the university must think deeply about issues and tell the colleges that this is the kind of textbooks you should have. This is the kind of syllabus you should have. This is the kind of curriculum you should have. And then leave it to the colleges to decide how they implement it. Don't sit on top of them and say this and that and the other. Even after the introduction of the autonomous colleges, universities were very, what shall we say, possessive about their rights and privileges. And that has created problems. Some colleges had to go to the court to get exemption from what the university was saying. I don't know about Tamil Nadu, but certainly in Kerala there was a big issue. But those have to be solved. If they cannot resolve it, then the courts will resolve on the basis of the law of the land.
There is one more question, sir.
Yes.
From Kashmir to Tamil Nadu, there will be same education, but I haven't how they can study their regional history.
They will have the same education with local variations. Because we are one country and we cannot afford to create citizens of various kinds. So it will have to be a same system, but it is a certain amount of uniformity, not absolutely exactly different from each other. That's not the point. The point is not, something is not imposed from above. So these are guidelines on the basis of which you can, adjust your curriculum, because the boards of studies will still be in the universities concerned. So they'll have the freedom to do all this. We recently saw in Kannur University, they introduced some literature of the so-called, the ideologues of the BJP. And their logic was that students must learn about all the great people of India, whether they belong to Congress party or BJP or Communists. But there was a huge protest. And so the university had to withdraw, change the syllabus, change the textbooks. So such things will happen. If somebody wants to teach you about Godse, naturally there will be a protest. But they didn't do that. They only talked about some other ideological leaders. But even that had to be removed. So such checks and balances will always be available, because we are a democratic country. This is not China. So everybody's views will be taken into account. In fact, this education policy was discussed starting from the villages, from the panchayats, block offices. That's how it started. Millions of pages were generated. This was not written by somebody sitting in Delhi. Yes, Naveen, you have a question?
I have one question, sir.
Karthikeyan.
Sir, காலையில ஆய் போனீங்களா சார்?
Sorry?
காலையில ஆய்
Sir, good morning.
I can't hear what you are saying. Are you going to ask a question?
Okay. Sir, good morning, sir. Joshua from Bishop Hebrew College, and I just wanted to have a doubt. It's not of a doubt; it's of knowing your opinion. We have different we have Ivy Leagues, and we have eminent and we have strong institutions like IIM and IITs in our country, and we are really when we take and look at IITs and IIM, they are actually developing and they are paving ways of the education system. In what way, what will be your opinion on this new education policy that our institution will be a benchmark or it will be equivalent to the Ivy Leagues or the world educational system? Which phase do you think that this new education policy is actually concentrating on actually matching with par with the world education system or the Ivy Leagues?
Certainly, we will look for the most excellent institution. So when you do that, it will be possible that some will be at an advantage, like the IITs, IIMs, etc. will be an advantage. They don't have to do very much in order to make it an institution of excellence. But an individual college or a government college may have a lot to do. They may need funding. Private universities have money, but government colleges or the schools that do not have money. So where will you get that? Can the government find that much money, etc.? So that is why they are talking about a 30-year period. It is not that everybody should be brought up to the same level at one stretch. Some countries have managed to do that. China has done that. Even other developing countries, even if you go to Sri Lanka or Malaysia, Singapore, you find very modern education systems. So it depends on the initiative that you take. And if you have a 19th century mindset and 20th century syllabus, and we are preparing for the 21st century students, that is where the crisis will come. So we have to integrate all these. And mindset is the most important thing. Because there is a general approach, which I saw in my 5 years in education, is that we are quite happy with what we do. Why waste all this time doing new things? And that has been the mentality, unfortunately, even of teachers, not to speak about students. Unwillingness to accept new methodologies, new systems. How many teachers will be ready to go for a refresher course and go and study a new system, methodology? They get to get a few marks here, some points here. But which teacher has gone on to study the methodology of a modern university and come back and practiced it? I haven't come across any. And that is what the new education policy is pushing for. There will be many, many fellowships for teachers to go abroad, to go and study. Even this new institution that US, India, Australia and Japan, this one is called Quad. It's supposed to be a security organization, but they are going to provide fellowships for teachers to study in all these 4 major countries of the world. So this is the kind of the move that we are taking place. But we have to start somewhere. If we sit back and say, oh, this new education policy is no good, well, that is the end of it. But that attitude nobody is taking. Even the Kerala government, which opposes it, are slowly adopting some of the recommendations that have been made by the education policy.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Students, those who are online, if you have any questions, you can post them on the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and you can interact with the resource person.
One more question, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Is the COVID-19 trigger sharp surge in the frequency of online teaching activities around the world harmful for the teacher and the crowd?
No, I'm not very clear what you're asking. Online education, you mean whether it will continue or not? Is that the question?
surge in the frequency of online teaching activities around the world harmful for the teacher and the taught?
No, there are facilities around the world all the time. This is not new at all. You can register in the best universities in the world sitting at home. You know, all these platforms, suppose you go to Coursera, and then they will give you 43 universities, the best in the world. And then they will give you courses. Just click those courses and hire and join. There is no payment. They don't charge you anything. You simply have to follow the lessons, answer questions, and then you get a diploma or a degree from them, which is recognized everywhere. So this is already exists, this system. But that, of course, shifting into that kind of a situation is not what is required, because we have our own requirements. The other thing we need to do is to also merge the requirements of the industry with the education that you provide. See, in many countries of the world, the industry comes to the university, not after the examinations, not to pick up your best graduates and go. They come initially, before you start a course. They'll come and tell you, this is the kind of graduates we need 5 years from now. Okay? And you have the expertise to teach that. So you say, all right, put your money where your mouth is. Set up a laboratory, set up a library, give us a conference hall, give us the medical equipment. And then they pay for it. And when the graduates are produced, they recruit them. Here what happens is they come to the so-called college campus recruitment and pick up your best students and go away without paying a penny for it. In fact, we are so grateful to them that they have taken our graduates. But that is not the system in the world. The industry must invest in education. Then only they will get the graduates that they need. Otherwise, what they're doing now is to set up huge training establishments. Infosys has 15,000 people being trained in Trivandrum. What is the purpose? Why don't you do it in the universities? So these are kind of things that we have to move and adopt these things in a very ingenious manner. And the education policy provides that platform for all of us to.
Sir, each state has different education policy and different opinions, but how this education policy helps to rid of this problem, sir?
No, it's not that. What is the UGC doing if each state has its own education policy? It's not there. These are all regulated by the UGC. So don't think that every state has a different education system. Most of it is central already. And someday, like for example, the assessment system, you all know. The assessment system decides what the quality of your colleges or the university is. So what more regulatory system can you have? So if you don't get the appropriate points, you don't get to allowances from the UGC. You don't get facilities. So there is a system. So to say that each state has its own system is not true. It is a coordinated system already. But they have the freedom to introduce new changes, subject, of course, to the UGC. All the recommendations that we made as the Kerala State Higher Education Council, we got it vetted by the UGC. In fact, UGC representatives came and sat on the meetings of the council to prepare these recommendations. So there is no such thing of a conflict. There is a politicization of education, as you know. That is the curse. And that politicization must be avoided. Yeah, okay. What is it? Abhirami. You are saying something, Abhirami? I can't see you. Now it is the name of a telephone, Vivo 1610. Who is that? You are still muted.
Sir.
Yep.
Sir, myself, Titus Ryan.
Yeah.
And I have a question of 2021 batch, sir. Students who have studied at 2021 batch, like they have been easily passed their 12th examinations for that because of like government's all pass. So what is the structure that they have been hoping for the future jobs for 2021 batch, sir? Like already like HDFC Bank has announced that there will be no job for 2021 batches because they have been all passed by the government. So what would be the hope for the future future jobs for 2021 batch?
So where did you get this idea that there will be no jobs for them?
Sir,
Right.
actually, I refer from a Karekala. My brother is one of my brother. He's a manager of HDFC Bank. And he informed me that batches from 2021 won't be able to get jobs in HDFC Bank. And
But everybody, you are not wanting to go to HDFC. Your brother is already there.
yes,
There are
sir.
so many other things you can do, don't you know? Why don't you
Yes, sir.
why don't you go and learn aircraft management? Why not? Why should you be in the HDFC? I can give you 50 areas where you can go and take a professional course and take a job. Don't think only in terms of banks and government. There are hundreds of institutions looking for people. Don't think that the pandemic has created confusion and chaos. Not only
Excuse me,
about
sir.
jobs, but also examination. You know, the COVID-19 has affected all of us. So that's quite clear. And therefore, there may be temporary difficulties. But jobs will always be there.
Yes, sir. But during COVID times and all, most of the higher education students were suffered of online classes for lack of network issues, and there wasn't no good interaction between teachers and students. So most of the students were suffering from knowledge about their own subjects. So what would that benefit in future?
You ask your grandparents what happened during the Second World War. Was life normal? Did they get what they want? Did they get the education they want? We have been lucky, even I have been lucky, that we did not have to go through a global crisis like this before. So people who were born after 1945 and died before 2019 have not experienced this. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So this generation, unfortunately, your generation, there's a lot of interruption. Your generation is unfortunate that you got it at this time. My generation, having enjoyed life all these years, we complain about it. When will the old times come back? So this is just a way of life, the world, how the world functions. So you have to make the best of what you get. If offline classes are about to start, colleges in Kerala, they already opened. So it will be changed, but this is not going to be permanent. But major changes will have to be brought into your thinking and your planning and the kind of jobs that you're looking for.
So there is one last question, sir.
Yeah.
How will this affect those who are currently employed or to be employed in a few years? Will this be a threat and lead to unemployment of those people in future?
No, they may have to change their jobs, but they will not lose their jobs. People say 80 million jobs have been lost because of technology, but 110 million new jobs have been created. So it is not that technology will eliminate jobs. It will eliminate some kinds of jobs. Look at, for example, when I was in the government service, all of us had secretaries who could take dictation and type out things for you. Now you won't get any secretary like that. There are no dictators anymore. So no point in my saying, oh, look at me now, I have to type my own letters. Yes, you have to learn that. So you're much faster than dictating to your secretary, then she typing it and bringing it back to you, then you correcting it, she retyping it and sending it. You type it and send it, the business is over. So these changes that take place, that means there is no job for shorthand typists in the world. Nobody wants them. Because you can talk to a machine and that will be typed. So why do you need, so if you are a shorthand artist, you will have no job. They are data processors, they are not typewriter typists. So this is, major changes are taking place. See, a time may come when you don't need a president of the United States. An excellent computer established in the White House will do the job. So does it mean that nobody will become president? The president will have to sit there, at least as a figure, he has to sit there and operate the computer. So he will have a job. So that is the kind of transformation which is taking place. So don't get stuck in what you have come so far, studied or learned. Be able to be flexible and dynamic. That's it. Look at millionaires. Now you don't have to go to even an MBA school. Nobody wants MBA degrees anymore. You need a laptop and a garage to keep two of your assistants. And then you become a multi-millionaire, multi-billionaire. Because what you need is just an idea. You know how the internet mail was invented. An Indian boy who was not even an engineer who produced Hotmail. His total investment was $20,000. And within 5 years, he sold that whole company for $450 million to Microsoft. That's the kind of money people are making. Look at the chains that they are making of hotels. Look at cars. You don't need a single car in your company. You can run a transport system. You don't need to own a single restaurant. You can own a Swiggy company on which everybody depends. They don't have anything. They don't have a chef. They don't have a masala maker. So this is how the world should move. So you should come up with things which people need. This is what the senior Ambani told his son. You know, he got educated in the West and came back and told his father, you give me a job. He said, I'm not going to give you a job. You go out into the open and see what people need. Talk to the people. What is it that is lacking in the society? And then invent it. And then you come and ask me for the money, I'll give you. That is how Ambani's built their empires. And these are not just one example or two examples. That is a trend. How many startups are coming up every year in Kerala alone? I don't know about Tamil Nadu. And the government encourages it. All of them don't succeed. Everybody does not become a millionaire. You must have heard about these Byju's study system. He's become a multimillionaire because his system was acceptable to the world at large. So this is the kind of things that you have to look at. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful session and clarifying all our doubts. Finally, let us conclude this webinar with a note of thanks by my friend Janathan, the BCom aide.
Good afternoon, everyone. It was quite a good session which helped us to understand the new education policy and how it will help us in this contemporary world. We would like to thank our Chief Guest of Honor, Mr. T.P. Srinivasan, sir, for sharing his wealth of information. Thank you, sir. We would also like to thank our principal, Dr. Paul Dayavaran, sir, and our HOD, Jean Yandraj, sir, for making this session successful, and Dr. Fernanda Egan's ma'am, Mr. Bose, sir, and Joshua, sir, for conducting this event. We also thank all the participants for their cooperation. We take this moment to thank the faculties and the technical team who had their helping hand in guiding this program and making this event successful. Finally, hoping this session was very helpful, I would like to wish you all a very good day. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Students, now you can leave the meeting. And students, please fill the feedbacks and you can leave the meeting.